as a society, I think we're not ignorant to it. I think we're really aware of the challenges and the problems and all the issues that we face. But I think, just understanding the magnitude of it and, our ability to really move the needle can sometimes be a bit challenging. So I suppose, like, what I'm interested in, especially with you being a UN Environment Program Ambassador, is, would you say you're optimistic about the our current way forward and, how we are trying to tackle these issues?
In my role as a UN Environment Goodwill Ambassador, and in my role as environmental advocate, I'm in the business of selling hope, right? Otherwise, there is no role. But to be honest with you, it's getting harder and harder to have that optimism, and that optimism, I guess, is what's kept me going for so many decades, right? I mean, I first started speaking about conservation and sustainability in 1996. So I've been at this a really, really long time, but increasingly it's very, very hard because as time goes by and as those deadlines come and go and as those commitments continue not to be met, it's very hard, especially when you know what the science is around the state of our planet, and around the different planetary systems, around the different sort of systems that are already collapsing. Hope becomes harder and harder to find, right? So increasingly, I find myself focusing on shifting the kind of the intention or the motivation from we need to save the planet so that we can survive as a humanity here, because without a balanced ecosystem and rich biodiversity, humanity really can't survive. So my fight to fight for the environment is really for our ability to survive here on this planet, right? But increasingly, it's like we need to have a balanced approach because two things. One is the reality is we're headed down a pretty slippery slope already. And COVID is just the tipping point. And COVID, we have to remember, is a direct result of our engagement with the environment and wildlife. So it's like, okay, we are headed in this direction. So what can we do about it? If we can't pull back right now, we have to give ourselves the tools for our inner reality to be able to deal with the outer reality, regardless of what's going on, because it's going to get harder and harder. So we need the tools within our mind to be able to cope. So it's really about radical self-care as we continue to progress with all of the challenges that we're facing as a global community.
What does not to cut you off, but what does radical self-care really mean?
Well, it's not just self-care of the body, but it's care of the mind, and it's an understanding that our outer reality can be shaped from our inner reality, right? So if you gave two people the same incident, depending on their perspectives, they'll be able to process that differently, right? So if we have the tools in our mind to be able to adjust our perspectives and shape the way that we cope and manage with our outer reality, that is to me is radical self-care, because we work out our bodies, and because it's a muscle, and if our bodies are injured, we go and see somebody who might be able to help us with that injured muscle, right? We go and we do rehab. We will treat it with anti-inflammatories or rub a salve on it, and the same can be said of the mind, and we need to remember that, right? And as we move further and further, even through COVID, even over the next 5 years, UN says suicide rates will increase 25%. That's a lot, right? And that's something that nobody's really talking about. So we need to be able to look after our minds and to come together as a community to deal with these things with a sense of togetherness, as opposed to us and them, and increased separation that's occurring, right? So it's really about those things.